By Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, Dave Lochran, Adam Scher. It is Monday, September 23rd, 2019. You know what that means, Adam?
Almost basketball season?
Almost basketball season, yeah. That means we've got 1 week left of the Major League Baseball regular season. You've been grinding away with the deeper dive, the MLB strategy show. So my guess is you haven't lost a step. Me, on the other hand, trying to juggle a bunch at once. You've been going hard with baseball. First of all, how have Free Money Tuesdays been, as everyone talks about? Actually, it should be Free Money Monday because they don't include the Monday games anymore.
Yeah, it hasn't been great. Baseball has just been frustrating for the last month or so. But
is there any rhyme or reason, or is it just a tough stretch?
Just baseball. I mean, pinch hitters constantly doesn't help anything, but it's just baseball.
Do you think bullpen games has changed a lot in terms of how we analyze stuff, or does it really just allow us to wipe games off the slate on certain days?
I think it's mostly the latter. Because like bullpen games, even if the bullpen isn't great, they're still not appealing because you're getting so many fresh arms, so many different looks. And then, with teams that actually have, like good openers, followed by, good bullpens, it's even worse. That to me, it just makes it, there are more games that are just entirely unappealing.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this much though. Doesn't it feel like going into next season, we're going to see even more of this though?
Yeah, we saw it increase this season from last season. When Tampa started doing it last year, they were just kind of crazy, everyone thought. And then teams started to copycat that. And, even like the Orioles, who obviously I follow more than anyone else, they used an opener the other day. It went really well when Aaron Brooks came in relief and finished out the rest of the game. And they asked Brandon Hyde if he thought that was something they would do more next season. And he was like, well, ideally, we would have 5 to 7 competent starters on our team that could just start, but we're probably not going to have that. So yeah, I think it's something that we'll look at.
Right. And you're going to see a lot of that. I mean, the Phillies rotation has been god awful. Well, fortunately for opposing teams, their bullpen's been just as bad. But in large part, you're right. Relievers who work short innings are better than like your back of the rotation starters that you're asking to go 5.
Right, exactly. It's the only real negative to it is if you have guys that don't have options, you get in trouble because you burn out your bullpen. But if you have just these young guys that throw hard and they have options, you use them. If they pitch more than you intended, you just option them to the minor leagues. They're down there for 10 days or whatever, and then they come back, and right. You can kind of just recycle that way. So I don't think it's going anywhere.
Neither do I. I think it's just going to expand. The Deeper Dive is presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, home of the $400,000 baller, $50K to first. $50K to first, pretty phenomenal payout structure. They dropped it down to $400, but you still have 50, 30, 20, 10, 5. It's really solid, and you can get in there. It's only $10 to enter. You know what? You can enter 3 times by signing up through us at awesemo.com and getting $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, which are as good as cash to use on the site. Just go to awesemo.com, AWESEMO, click on the MLB tab. The Spotlight Hitters article is right at the top on the landing page. It's totally free, and you'll see the Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports link right at the top of the article. I've mentioned it before. We get trouble for posting links into the chat. At least I do on my account. So go to awesemo.com, click on the MLB tab, Spotlight Hitters, and the article will feature the link right at the top. It's very simple. And upon depositing, you'll get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, which can help bolster that bankroll a little bit when you get started off over at Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They've got the $50K to first, $400,000 baller. The monster free roll they're running with at the end of the year, cumulative top score wins a lot of money. And there's money to be won each week. It's $150,000 total prize pool in this free roll. $10K to first on the $25, $100,000 guaranteed. And then, of course, if you're working with a smaller bankroll, $1 to enter, $25K in prizes, and $4K to first. They also have some management-free contests, meaning that all of the money paid in from the player gets paid back out to the player. So plenty of reasons to head over to Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports and check them out. Not only for football, but all of the sports, MLB and golf included. And, of course, basketball when that gets underway next month. That is the sponsor of the Deeper Dive, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. All right, man, you ready to dive into this 5-gamer?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. First, as I always ask you, general opinion on the slate. Anything that stands out to you before we go game by game?
Pretty freaking ugly.
Okay.
Pitching's not good. There's no Coors game. There's outside of Toronto, there's not even really a hitter's park on the slate. It's a 5-game slate, so if you're making some lineups and tournaments that feel ugly, that's probably fine because ownership plays a little bit bigger role. There's going to be very concentrated ownership today, I think, on pitching in particular. So I think it's a slate that feel free to get as creative as you want.
All right. Well, let's start with Philadelphia and Washington. Patrick Corbin, Zach Eflin. Pretty big difference in expected runs here. Third lowest implied total on the slate for Philly at 3.7. Second highest on the slate for Washington at 5.4. The Phillies' playoffs hopes are dashed. It's a wrap. They went in and got smoked yesterday by Cleveland. It's over. Put a fork in them. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of lineups we see from them over the final week of the season. But looking at today's lineups, Adam, you're going to see, and we already have to some extent, seen a number of teams running out, quote unquote, unique lineups. But today, you still have Harper, Kingery, Hoskins, no Real Muto, who's played 1 million games this year, Andrew Knapp, Adam Hazley, Cesar Hernandez, Jose Pirela batting 5th. So, outside of a few bats in this lineup, it's kind of ugly.
Yeah, I think it's a really good lineup for Corbin. I'd mentioned on the show with Jake this morning that I was interested in Corbin just from a raw points perspective because you have to get them somewhere and there's a lot of value hitting on this slate, but that it was kind of a scary spot. But no Real Muto just makes a huge difference to me in addition to the way this lineup's set up. There's suddenly a lot of strikeouts here. Scott Kingery against left-handed pitching since last year struck out 32% of the time. Andrew Knapp's at 34.2%. Adam Hazley's at 29.2%. That's 3, really high strikeout guys. Pirela's not a high K guy. Segura isn't. Hoskins isn't. So it's still not like it's, top to bottom a lot of strikeouts, but it's just a pretty watered down lineup here between the injuries and between no Real Muto. So even more interested in Corbin now than I was this morning.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. This is not a particularly imposing lineup. Sure, you don't have a ton of lefties in here, but I can't say that I'm all that frightened by it. It's not at Citizens Bank Park either. Oddly, it was like 90 degrees almost in Philadelphia today, kind of out of nowhere. But I'm with you on Corbin. I'll ask you straight up, of the 10 pitchers on this slate, is Corbin your number one, or will it be Matz? Will it be Caleb Smith? Who is your number one right out of the gate?
Corbin's my top projected. Matz is my highest owned.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's probably what we're going to see in large part across the industry, especially on 2-pitcher sites, right? At least I would assume that to be the case. Right now, yeah, Matt's Corbin number 1 and 2 on DraftKings. On Fanduel, Corbin number 1, Matt's number 2, and on our sponsor, Yahoo, Corbin number 1 and Matt's number 2, but that's because of Corbin's price. So, yeah, they're, I guess you could say interchangeably, Adam, but those are the clear-cut number 1s and 2s, you'd say, based on all your research?
Yeah, and when I crunched lineups for DraftKings before the show, I got a little over 70% Matz compared to right around 40% Corbin. So I think the pricing on Matz just puts him far and away number 1 for me.
Okay. Zach Eflin on the other side, is there any interest here at a reasonable price point, or is it all Washington?
It's Washington for me. Eflin, just not a very good strikeout pitcher. He is better against right-handed hitters than left-handed hitters as far as run prevention goes, but still just a 19.3% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters this year. And then you look at this Nats team, just not a ton of strikeouts in this lineup. So I think it's tough to get excited about Eflin. The only real argument you could make for him, I think, is ownership. But again, I just prefer being contrarian with bats compared to pitchers. Pretty decent lineup Washington's running out. They have Howie Kendrick in there, which is something they haven't been doing against right-handed pitching a lot this year, even though they should. So that makes the lineup a bit better. Another low K guy that has power. The only real strikeouts in this lineup come from 7, 8, and 9. So that's not overly appealing either. You have a couple left-handed bats with Eaton, Soto, and Cabrera, the switch hitter. Soto, I think, is probably the best hitting play on the entire slate. So I'm much more interested in the Washington bats.
Yeah, we have him projected as the second highest projected for fantasy points, second highest projected on the entire slate. I believe Rendon, we have it number 2 in terms of hitters. Who was number 1? Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso at number 1, but it's pretty close. So Juan Soto, your favorite bat here. If you're running out at one lineup in a single entry tournament and it's a Washington stack, who are your 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Turner, Soto, probably Rendon, and then it would be tough between Eaton and Cabrera. I think Cabrera's positions are more appealing. There's a lot of quality outfield value today. There's much less second base value. So probably Turner, Soto, Rendon, and Cabrera.
Would you say there's a clear cut 1, 2, and 3, and then it kind of falls off?
Yeah. Turner, Soto, Rendon are, I think, the easy top 3.
Any interest in Philly bats here against the popular Corbin?
Rhys Hoskins in particular, he's just really favorably priced. He's 3,900 on DraftKings. I think that given it being a 5-game slate, I don't even mind having Hoskins in the same lineup as Corbin, just because Corbin will give up some power to righties. Sure. Hoskins is underpriced, and people don't really do that. So I think that it makes you a little bit contrarian, even though it's obviously not totally optimal, but on this slate, I'm okay with it. Segura is really cheap as well, but Hoskins is the one that really stands out.
Okay. Yeah, that would be it for me. I mean, maybe Kingery here, favorable spot in the order. He does have enough power to be decent. I remember I talked about Kingery earlier this year against Corbin, right? And it was postponed, and then I was like, all right, go Kingery against Corbin, and then it was postponed again. You remember that when we had the game postponed like 3 days in a row? Yeah,
we had to talk about Corbin against the Phillies for like an entire week.
Yeah, and then he homered, which was cool. I still lost on that slate, but I got my Kingery home run. But nevertheless, he's at least a cheap bat. He's got enough power, like I said, and isn't terrible in a pretty terrible lineup. Let's talk about Toronto and Baltimore. Right now, you've got the highest implied total on the slate. Going to the Toronto Blue Jays, Adam, against Shepherd at 6.1 right now. It's pretty high at the Rogers Center. So I guess the first question here is, are we buying into that? Do we agree with them being the highest owned team on the slate, have highest aggregate ownership? And right now they do have the highest top stack probability. So your focus on this team, where is it?
Yeah, I love the offense in this game on both sides, but Toronto, 6.1 implied run total, the highest on the slate. They are running out a pretty appealing lineup against Chandler, Shepherd, and whoever else pitches for the Orioles out of the bullpen. Shepherd's making his 4th career major league appearance. He's 27. There's nothing about him that stands out as a quality pitcher. This has been the best park for home runs in baseball this year, according to ESPN's Park Factors. You get some value here. Billy McKinney leading off, I think, is a cash game lock and a perfectly good tournament play. The guy has power. He's really, really cheap. Has the platoon advantage against Shepherd. Then you have to pay up a little bit for Biggio and Gurriel, and then it just drops right back off. I think Vlad Guerrero is the top value third baseman. I think Grichuk's a great outfield play. Tellez is good at first base. This entire lineup has power, even down to Danny Jansen catching. So I think it's a lineup where the ownership is pretty much always concentrated at the top, but you can even go to the bottom of this order and get some lower owned guys in your stacks.
Okay. Favorite stack?
Right up there with the Mets.
Okay. This is appealing too, because while these guys they're not crazy expensive as a team, and I think you touched on it a bit, but like there are a few guys that you're going to have to pay for, but Toronto is not egregiously expensive. So I think that makes it pretty friendly from a stacking standpoint. On the other side, you've got Baltimore against Clay Buchholz, who, by the way, Clay Buchholz right now is coming in with the 3rd highest ownership on DraftKings. Much of that all of that because of the price point, and he's facing Baltimore. Do you have interest in Buchholz here at that sub 5K price point?
Yeah, and it's just because of the salary and what it lets you get in the lineups. I hate rostering a guy this bad at his ownership, especially because I don't think it's that great of a matchup. The Orioles haven't been a good offense this year, but they have a decent lineup going out there. 1 through 4 are all decent hitters with BR, Hayes, Mancini, Santander. Then it drops off some, but really it just comes down to the price. He's not someone that you're looking at on FanDuel, but at 4,800 on DraftKings, he stands out. At $30 on Yahoo, you can probably do better, but he's still really cheap. And there's just such limited options that, I'm coming in right around the field, a little below the field on Buchholz on DraftKings.
Okay. What about the offense going up against him? And by the way, totally site specific if we're talking Clay Buchholz. We should probably be very clear about that. Yeah. Even on Yahoo, where it's a 2-pitcher site, he's only projected at 9%. On DraftKings, you're looking at 32%. I will refresh this and see if we have a more recent update than an hour ago. No, so we'll get one soon. But what about Baltimore bats? You said they haven't been that bad. Does that translate to interest?
It's tough because I have so many. I mean, I have like a quarter of my lineups right now going to Buchholz, but I think that they are appealing in tournaments, especially the top 4. You have pretty appealing pricing on Austin Hayes and on Santander. Mancini and VR are expensive, but it is a good park for hitters, and it's a pitcher in Buchholz that's only struck out 13% of hitters this season. He has a 5.33 Sierra. He's just not a good pitcher, and he's going to be owned by close to a third of the field, so there is a leverage factor there as well.
All right. Talk to me about Tampa Bay and Boston, unless you have anything else in Baltimore, Toronto, before we move on.
No, that's it from that game.
Blake Snell, Ulysses Chassin opening. We should get Brian Johnson as the long man here. I really don't know how many pitches we should expect from him, though, Adam. Like, what are you expecting from a guy whose last 6 outings are 19 pitches, 8, 23, 2, 14, and 11?
It's a really, really interesting spot. And Jake and I talked about it this morning. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in how deep we should expect Chassin to go. So he's gone 2 2/3 innings in each of his last 2 starts, but he threw 48 pitches and then 72 pitches.
Yeah.
He was awful. He didn't pitch well in his last start. I don't know if Boston is just looking to get 3 innings out of him, regardless of how many pitches he throws, or if, let's say, he actually somehow threw 3 good innings and is at 48 pitches. They're going to say, go back out there for the 4th or the 5th until you're at 75 pitches. So the uncertainty actually makes him kind of interesting to me in tournaments, just because he's getting so much less ownership than Clay Buchholz, and he's not any worse than Clay Buchholz as far as a pitcher goes. There's certainly a chance that he's just going to throw 3 innings no matter what. And, obviously the upside is capped, but there's also the possibility that, he gives us 4 or 5 innings and pitches well. I just think that he's kind of appealing in tournaments for that reason. As far as Brian Johnson goes, again, it's tied to how deep into the game Chassin gets, but it's hard to believe Johnson really goes too far. I mean, he threw, like you said, 19, 8, 23 pitches.
Right.
So my best guess is something like 4 innings for Chassin and, 3 for Johnson or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously Johnson wasn't really spaced out a lot of these outings from the bullpen, like 10, 11, 12 pitches. I'm sorry, September 10th, 9th, and 12th pitched 3 days in a row, but no real amount of pitches there. Now he hasn't pitched in 5 days or so. So there is that. Like, if my guess is he probably throws like 50, but it's just pure speculation. Blake Snell on the other side of this game, though, 3.6 implied total for Boston. That's pretty impressive if you're Blake Snell, knowing that Boston's run totals are generally a whole lot higher than we'd seen, a whole lot higher than most teams. You still have Mookie, Devers, JD in this lineup. No Bogarts. It's a bit watered down towards the bottom for sure with Travis, Bradley, Hernandez, Owings, and Leone. But 3.6 implied total. Bottom of the lineup's pretty ugly. Marco Hernandez leading off. Blake Snell threw 26 pitches last time, though, Adam, in his return after a 2-month hiatus with what was wrong with it? He had something wrong with his arm, right? But his elbow. So. Yeah. But anyway, it's been 2 months. He threw 26 pitches. What are we expecting from him in the bullpen?
It's, I think, a pretty unappealing spot all the way around. You have a watered-down Boston lineup. You have some nice pricing on the Red Sox. JD's 4,200 on DraftKings. Mookie's 4,900. But we know Blake Snell's really good. we know this park's not good for hitting. And then just like we talked about at the top of the show with bullpen games, it's just so unappealing to take hitters in a bullpen game because you're getting all these different arms coming at you. And then especially when the opener basically is Blake Snell, who's one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. So I saw that they want to get 3 to 4 innings out of Snell. I don't think that's enough to roster Snell, especially not, maybe on Yahoo at $35, but even there, you're really capping your upside. And it's more of a play where you hope he gives you a perfect 3 or 4 innings and then every other pitcher on the slate sucks, which is certainly possible, but it's just a cap ceiling when you're on that strict of a pitch count. But you're not really excited about taking hitters against him. You're not excited about taking Marco Hernandez ever. Sam Travis will probably get pinch hit for, or possibly will get pinch hit for, as soon as Snell comes out of the game. So I'm not really getting to anything from the Boston bats or from Tampa pitching.
No, and it's truly an outrageous price tag on DraftKings.
Right. It's basically where Blake Snell would be against a full strength Red Sox lineup in like June or something.
Stretched out. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sure, it's a watered down lineup, but he's also, like you said, they're hoping he goes 3 or 4. Look, if he gets into a trouble inning and throws 28 pitches in an inning, he might not get out of the third. So right. It's really, really difficult despite how good he is. If Snell was $7K on DraftKings, I'd probably play him and just say, I'm hoping for 4 innings and 8 strikeouts,
Right. And I think you can at least consider that on Yahoo at $35.
Yeah,
he's
$5.
Yeah, he's $5 less than Matz. He's $1 more than Alex Young. The ceiling just isn't there because he's not going to go deep. But with how weak the pitching is on this slate, especially in that price tier, there's certainly a chance that Snell is the highest scoring pitcher just because he strikes out 6 guys in 4 innings and doesn't give up a run, and everyone else goes for 2 points.
You want to know what I'd like to see him do? I'd like to see him do exactly what Tyler Glasnow's done in each of his last 2 abbreviated starts.
I haven't paid attention, but has Glasnow been doing well, I'm guessing?
Well, he returned after being he was out for 4 months.
Yeah, he missed like almost the whole season.
I am the original Tyler Glasnow truther.
I remember making fun of you.
Huh?
I remember making fun of you.
Exactly. You and DC.
Yeah.
And I was so stoked about it this season because he looked awesome. And then I just forgot he was alive. Forgot he existed because players disappear and then they return. You're like, oh, hey. But 3 innings, no runs, 7 strikeouts, 20 fantasy points in 3 innings. He only threw 51 pitches, 52. And then 3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 5 strikeouts, 15 fantasy points. And he was priced at $5K and $5,800. Isn't it crazy that Glasnow is priced at $5K and $5,800, and from an upside standpoint was like one of the best fantasy pitchers in the league this year before getting injured? But Snell's maybe it's because it was a bigger slate, but Snell's literally twice that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. They definitely could have at least made it a decision point on Snell.
What are you thinking about the rest of this game?
Tampa's okay. It's just, again, it's a bullpen game, even though it's not particularly good arms and Chacin, Johnson, and then whoever else. It's still not a good hitter's park. You have a really expensive price tag on Austin Meadows, who's the best hitter here. Joey Wendell's an okay value leading off. I don't mind him in cash, but not my favorite guy in tournaments. Just doesn't give you that much upside. I really just don't have a lot of anything from this game.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either. You would think on a 5-gamer there'd be more to get to, but it's going to be pretty difficult. I'll just throw it out there before we move on. Implied total for the Rays is 5. But again, we don't know how many pitches we're going to see from any of these guys. It makes it much more difficult. Moving to the Mets and the Miami Marlins. This game at Citi Field. Look, both of these teams play in favorable pitchers' parks. But you got Steven Matz against Miami, a team that has the lowest implied total on the slate at 3.3. And then on the other side, explain this one to me. I know that Caleb Smith hasn't been especially sharp, but the Mets have a top 3 implied total today, Adam, at 5.3.
Yeah, wind blowing out the center here at 15 to 20 miles an hour. And you have a good Mets lineup. You have a pitcher in Caleb Smith that gives up a lot of power, especially outside of Miami. He's allowed 2.68 home runs per nine to right-handed hitters away from home this year. He's allowed over 2 home runs per nine to lefties away from home as well. And this Mets team just has a ton of power and good hitters against left-handed pitching. So they're up there as my favorite stack on the slate, right up there with Toronto. I think that Smith has good strikeout stuff, but there's not a ton of strikeouts in the Mets lineup to go with that power. It's a bad bullpen behind him. There's just so much upside throughout this lineup for the Mets, especially when you factor in the weather in New York.
Okay, so like you said, Toronto up there with the Mets, but right now you've got the Mets number one, right?
Yeah. When you factor in ownership, I have the Mets number one.
Yeah, and so just to reiterate, Mets with the third highest projected ownership and the third highest top stack chances. So it's a good spot for them today.
I'm mixing and matching a lot of Mets, Orioles, and Blue Jays.
Mets, Orioles, and Blue Jays?
Yeah.
What about Nationals?
Not really getting there. I think they're fine, but
how much of that has to do with paying up for Corbin?
Corbin's in like 40% of my lineups. I like the pricing on Toronto. I like the pricing on the Orioles. I like the leverage they offer against Buchholz. Like Eflin's not getting any ownership, so that's kind of a knock against the Nats.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Nats definitely pulling in quite a bit of ownership here on this 5-game slate. Now, okay, so we're kind of going in reverse here, which is fine. Number one, any interest in Caleb Smith? We can make it quick.
FanDuel specifically, I think he's okay because on FanDuel you have Steven Matz priced up to 8,900. You have Adam Wainwright at 9,200. So that mid-range is basically Smith, Snell, and Alex Young. And Snell, you're not getting a quality start out of him, which matters, and you're not getting the win. So you kind of are basically out of play on FanDuel. So in that price range, you end up with Caleb Smith or you end up with Alex Young. I would give the edge to Smith just because the strikeout stuff's better, but I really do hate the spot for him. The weather sucks for pitching. The park or the hitters on the Mets are just really good. I hate the matchup, but if you end up in that price range, I would prefer Smith to Young.
Yeah, now talk to me about Mats. Like I said, kind of reverse order here, talking hitters first, but lowest total on the slate against Miami. Is it just one of these spots where you shouldn't overthink it?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. There's obviously risk, but there's risk in every single pitcher tonight. There's risk in every pitcher every night, but especially tonight, there's just no real clear-cut options. Corbin's really expensive, other than on Yahoo where he's $48. And Matt's, especially on DraftKings, gives you at 7,600. He's, I think, the most underpriced pitcher on the slate. We prefer right-handed pitchers against the Marlins because they have almost an entirely right-handed lineup. They have a couple guys in there that are really tough to strike out, like Miguel Rojas and Starlin Castro. But this isn't the worst lineup. You did get Isan Diaz in there over Martin Prado, which is a big upgrade in strikeout percentage. You have Alfaro in the lineup. You have Lewis Brinson in the lineup. So there are strikeouts for Mats. And again, it's just a price tag where it's harder for him to disappoint, I think, than for basically any other pitcher on this slate, given his projection and his salary compared to everyone else.
All right, we'll get to our last game here. Before we do, if you haven't been to awesemo.com to check out all of the subscription plans that we have, like the Express package for $3.95 a week, or the All Access where you can get 50% off your first month by using the sign-up code Deeper Dive, all one word. Deeper Dive gets you 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus. Do so by going to awesemo.com/join and check out all of the different subscription options that we have. You can check all of them out instead of flying blind into something where you don't know what you're paying for. We want to make sure that if you do decide to sign up, you know exactly what you're in for and what's included with the subscription. But just a little look inside. Ownership projections, player projections, the top stack tool, we reference them every day on the site, developed and used daily by Alex Baker, Awesemo himself, the number one ranked DFS player in the world, and he's with us on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And of course, all of the projections, ownership for football, the top stack tool for that, and a crazy amount of other awesome content like the Fantasy Cruncher add-on and so much more. So use the sign-up code Deeper Dive and Make sure you don't put a space. Deeper Dive, all one word, when you sign up. Get your first month for 50% off, or check out our Express package for $3.95 a week. And when you do, head over to our premium Slack chat, introduce yourself, say what's up, and join the Awesome-O family. All right, Adam, Arizona, St. Louis. I've been waiting to ask you where you stand on a guy like Alex Young today. Not because I think he's, a particularly solid pitcher, but because the way ownership is, everyone else is getting a ton and he's single digits. So do you have any thoughts on him, or could he be viable?
I think he's viable because, there's just not a lot of opportunity cost. It's not somewhere that I think I'll get to, though. I'm just kind of not getting there. Like on DraftKings, I'm getting to Wainwright. I'm getting the Mats. I'm getting Buchholz. I'm getting Corbin. I'm getting some Chacin, like I said. Just not leaving much room for Young. I don't like the matchup for him. We still don't have a Cardinals lineup, but assuming it's, the lineup that we would expect, you're getting a lot of right-handed hitters. Carpenter's probably the only lefty in the lineup. And even though the Cardinals have been underwhelming offensively this year, we still have pretty long track records on guys like Goldschmidt, Ozuna, Molina. De Jong is good. Carpenter is whatever. He's having a bad year, but he's always been a good hitter. Fowler and Edman are also switch hitters, so they'll be hitting right-handed. And Young has decent strikeout stuff, but it's not like he's a great strikeout arm. So it's not like it's a crazy stand if that's a stand that you wanted to take in a single entry lineup or something and just take the unknown pitcher out of the group, but it's not one that I plan on taking.
Okay. 4.9 run total for St. Louis against Young. Coming back the other side, Arizona's at 4.2. Could you see yourself getting to Adam Wainwright?
Yeah, I think Wainwright, especially on DraftKings and Yahoo. He's $36 on Yahoo, which is really, really affordable. 8,100 on DraftKings is pretty solid as well. I don't love the matchup for strikeouts. He's not a great strikeout pitcher at this point in his career. He's better against righties. It's a balanced lineup. You have 4 lefties in the top 5, but Arizona does have a pretty low implied run total at 4.2. They have been a well below average offense. They're missing Ketel Marte, who's one of their best hitters. It's a spot where, normally I don't like going for guys looking for run prevention, but there's only so many options on this slate, so I think that Wainwright is a good option.
Okay. Talking about hitters, anyone stand out from either side? Because I don't think either of these pitchers are stellar, but neither of them have been bad either.
Right. Yeah, I think that right now we have the Cardinals coming in a little bit under-owned. So I think that, you can look to the middle of that order. One nice thing that I pointed out on the show this morning, someone asked about pinch hitters, and excluding double switches and blowouts, obviously those are a risk for any team. But you look at this Cardinals lineup, and there's no real reason to think that any of these guys are getting pinch hit for, because you're just not pinch hitting for Goldschmidt, Ozuna, Molina, or De Jong. Carpenter is probably starting the game against the lefty, so they're not going to pull him at some other point. Fowler and Edman are switch hitters, so I think that's something that makes them appealing. And then also just favorably priced. I think Ozuna is one of the better values on the slate. I think Yadi's a pretty strong catcher option, although I do have him behind Wilson Ramos. But I think the Cardinals are in a pretty decent spot. Again, like I'm not getting to as much of them right now as I am the Orioles, the Blue Jays, or the Mets, but they do look pretty appealing.
Okay. What are you doing with top stacks? I know we already talked about the Mets and Toronto, but is there anything off the radar here that you could find yourself being a fan of?
Not really. I mean, just kind of scrolling through, it looks like Toronto and the Mets are like my 2 priorities, and then getting to Baltimore third, and then mixing in like some Washington and St. Louis the more I scroll down my lineups.
Is there anything at catcher, by the way? If you have your crunch pulled up, you can tell me where you're getting to mostly at the position, but it seems uglier than most tonight, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, all the Wilson Ramos. He's 3,600 on DraftKings. He has a 150 WRC plus against left-handed pitching since last year. That's actually the highest on the Mets, even higher than Peter Alonso. So he really stands out. And then I think Yadi Molina is okay. I think that Danny Jansen is okay. I especially like Jansen in tournaments because he's a way that you can get exposure to Toronto that maybe doesn't have a ton of ownership because he's batting 9th, and he does have power. But Wilson Ramos is the one that just jumps off the page, Jimmy.
All right, I'll ask you one more before we head out. Bit of a shorter show today, only 5 games and 2 of us, which, by the way, stick around Coming up at 6 p.m., you've got Josh Engelman and Jake Hari live before lock. And then NFL live before lock. That's presented by Fantasy Draft. Nolan and EMAC going to take you up till that 7:30 lock time for Monday Night Football. Chicago Bears, the Washington Redskins. That should be a barn burner.
Yeah,
Bears
I'm a Redskins fan, and I'm still like mildly excited for this game.
Yeah, I mean, well, look on the bright side. The Bears have scored 1 touchdown this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Redskins have a shot at winning. I just don't think it's going to be a very fun game to watch.
No, it won't. I do not buy into Mitch Trubisky.
I don't think he's as bad as he's looked in his first 2 games. I don't think he's good either, though.
No, the first 2 games came in very difficult matchups, but I don't think he's like the 6 TD Trubisky we saw in some of those games last year.
No, I agree.
Probably somewhere in the middle of the road. What was I asking you? Oh, I know. Outside of Corbin and Matz, if you had to go with a 3 and 4, right? Because you're not just going to have 2 pitchers, even though I'm sure you wouldn't mind it. Who would those guys be?
Adam Wainwright and begrudgingly Clay Buchholz.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my DraftKings exposures right now. I have Matz as my highest owned. I have Corbin and Wainwright both coming in around that 40% mark, and then I have Buchholz and Chacin both coming in around 20%.
Okay. Well, it sounds fair enough to me. We're going to head out. Before we do, if you like the show, you want to help support us, hit us with a thumbs up. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. It does a lot for us at Awesemo, and for the YouTube channel, of course, allows us to continue producing this free content like we do every day because we love to. So do that. We appreciate you for it. Wish you the best of luck tonight. We'll catch you back here tomorrow on The Deeper Dive, presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. It'll be myself, Adam Shar, and of course, one and only Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. I stopped there because I said Shar, and I was gonna fix it. I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Let's get
I was like half listening, and then I heard it, and it was just like, yeah,
I know, man. I'm a disgrace. Anyway, good luck tonight. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow on The Deeper Dive.